Yamunatiravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Let's say this together. Narayana Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Om Agyanati Mirandasya Yananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militanyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So welcome everyone to this morning's Srimad Bhagavatam class. We're going to be starting chapter 17 of the 5th canto called The Descent of the River Ganges. So we will, actually we're going to do the first verse. I mean, the verse that we're focusing on is the first one. So we'll just go ahead and do that, and then we'll go back and read the subsequent verses up to 10, up to and including 10. And as you can see, it's a big lot of prose here, so we're just going to go straight to the synonyms. Oops. How do you zoom in? Just Control plus? That's what I'm doing. Okay, cool. Is that big enough? Could be bigger. Okay. All right, let's do this all together. Shri Shuka Uvacha, Shri Shukadev Goswami said, Tatra, at that time, Bhagavata, of the incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sakshat, directly, Yagyalingasya, the enjoyer of the results of all sacrifices, Vishnu, of Lord Vishnu, Vikramata, while taking his second step, Vamapada, of his left leg, Angushta, of the big toe, Naka, by the nail, Nirbhina, pierced, Urdhva, upper, Andakataha, the covering of the universe consisting of 7 layers, earth, water, fire, etc. Vivarena, through the hole, Anta Pravishta, having entered the universe, Ya, which, Bhaya Jaladhara, the flow of water from the causal ocean outside the universe, Tat, of him, Charana Pankaja, of the lotus feet, Avanejana, by the washing, Aruna Kinjalka, by reddish powder, Uparanjita, being colored, Akila Jagat, of the whole world, Agamala, the sinful activities, Apaha, destroys, Upasparshana, the touching of which. Amala, completely pure. Sakshad, directly. Bhagavad Padi, emanating from the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Iti, thus. Anupalakshita, described. Vachaha, by the name. Abhidiyamana, being called. Ati mahata kalena, after a long time. Yuga sahasra upalakshanena, consisting of 1,000 millenniums. Divaha, of the sky. Murdani, on the head. Druvaloka. Avatatara, descended. Yat, which. Ta, that. Vishnu Padam, the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Ahu, they call. Yeah, that was a lot. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shukadeva Goswami said, "My dear king, Lord Vishnu, the enjoyer of all sacrifices, appeared as Vamanadev in the sacrificial arena of Bali Maharaj. Then he extended his left foot to the end of the universe and pierced a hole in its covering with the nail of his big toe. Through the hole, the pure water of the causal ocean entered this universe as the Ganges River. Having washed the lotus feet of the Lord, which are covered with reddish powder, the water of the Ganges acquired a very beautiful pink color. Every living being can immediately purify his mind of material contamination by touching the transcendental water of the Ganges. Yet its water remained ever pure. Because the Ganges directly touches the lotus feet of the Lord before descending within this universe, she is known as Vishnu Padi. Later, she received other names like Jahnavi and Bhagirati. After 1,000 millenniums, the water of the Ganges descended to Dhruvaloka, the topmost planet of this universe. Therefore, all learned sages and scholars proclaim Dhruvaloka to be Vishnu Pada, situated on the Lord Vishnu's lotus feet." Oh, that's okay. I think it's fine.
In this verse, Shukadev Goswami describes the glories of the Ganges River. The water of the Ganges is called Patita Pavani, the deliverer of all sinful living beings. It is a proven fact that a person who regularly bathes in the Ganges is purified both externally and internally. Externally, his body becomes immune to all kinds of diseases, and internally, he gradually develops a devotional attitude towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Throughout India, many thousands of people live on the banks of the Ganges, and by regularly bathing in her waters, they are undoubtedly being purified both spiritually and materially. Many sages, including Shankaracharya, have composed prayers in praise of the Ganges, and the land of India itself has become glorious because such rivers as the Ganges, Yamuna, Godavari, Kaveri, Krishna, and Narmada flow there. Anyone living on the land adjacent to the rivers is naturally advanced in spiritual consciousness. Srila Madhvacharya says, Vahare Vama Padum tu Tad Aneshu tu Dakshinam Padam Kalpeshu Bhagavan Ujahara Trivikrama. Standing on his right foot and extending his left to the edge of the universe, Lord Vamana became known as Trivikrama, the incarnation who performed 3 heroic deeds.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you. So let's go to the verses here. Oh, yeah. Oh. Text 1 we just read. So we'll go on to text 2.
Dhruva Maharaj, the famous son of Maharaj Uttapana, is known as the most exalted devotee of the Supreme Lord because of his firm determination in executing devotional service. Knowing that the sacred Ganges water washes the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, Dhruva Maharaj, situated on his own planet, this very day accepts that the water on his head with great devotion. Because he constantly thinks of Krishna very devoutly within the core of his heart, he is overcome with ecstatic anxiety. Tears flow from his half-open eyes, and eruptions appear on his entire body.
Yeah. So when the Ganga enters the universe, it goes to Dhruva Loka, and then Dhruva takes that water on his head, and he becomes ecstatic. Text 3. Oops.
The 7 great sages, Marichi, Vashishta, Atri, and so on, reside on the planets beneath Dhruvaloka. Well aware of the influence of the water of the Ganga, to this day they keep Ganges water on the tufts of hair on their heads. They have concluded that this is the ultimate wealth, the perfection of all austerities, and the best means of prosecuting transcendental life. Having obtained uninterrupted devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they neglect all other beneficial processes like religion, economic development, sense gratification, and even merging into the Supreme. Just as Gyanis think that merging into the existence of the Lord is the highest truth, these 7 exalted personalities accept devotional service as the perfection of life.
After
Hare Krishna. See how long it lasts. Go ahead, Raseshri.
After purifying the 7 planets near Dhuvaloka, the polar star, the Ganges water is carried through the spaceways of the demigods in billions of celestial airplanes. Then it inundates the moon, Chandraloka, and finally reaches Lord Brahma's abode atop Mount Meru.
On top of Mount Meru, the Ganges divides into 4 branches, each of which gushes in a different direction, east, west, north, and south. These branches, known by the name Sita, Alakananda, Chakshu, and Bhadra, flow down to the ocean.
The branch of Ganges known as Sita flows through Brahmapuri atop Mount Meru. From there it runs down to the nearby peaks of Kesharachal mountains, which stand almost high as Mount Meru itself. These mountains are like a bunch of filaments around Mount Meru. From the Kesharachal mountains, the Ganges falls to the peak of Gandamadana mountain and then flows into the land of Bhadrashvavarsha. Finally, it reaches the ocean of salt water in the west.
The branch of Ganges known as Chakshu falls into the summit of Malayavan mountain, and from the cascades into the land of Ketumal Varsha. The Ganges flows incessantly through Ketumal Varsha, and in this way also reaches the ocean of salt water in the west.
The branch of the Ganges known as Bhadra flows from the northern side of Mount Meru. Its waters fall onto the peaks of Kumuda Mountain, Mount Nila, Sveta Mountain, and Shingavan Mountain in succession. Then it runs down into the province of Kuru, and after crossing through that land, flows into the saltwater ocean in the north.
Text 9. Similarly, the branch of the Ganges known as Alakananda flows from the southern side of Brahmapuri, Brahmasadana, passing over the tops of mountains in various lines. It falls down with fierce force upon the peaks of the mountains Hemakuta and Hemakuta. After inundating the tops of those mountains, the Ganges falls down onto the tract of land known as Bharatvarsha, which he also inundates. Then the Ganges flows into the ocean of salt water in the south. Persons who came to bathe in this river are fortunate. It is not very difficult for them to achieve with every step the results of performing great sacrifices like Rajasuya and Ashwamedha yajnas.
So I'm wondering if somebody can create a pictorial representation of this. So easy to understand. Oh, Jai. Text 10. Many other rivers, both big and small, flow from the top of Mount Meru. These rivers are like daughters of the mountain and they flow to the various tracts of land in hundreds of branches.
What? Okay. So we're going to talk about the Ganga. How many of you have ever been to taken bath in the river Ganga in India? Quite a few of you. Some of you. A few of you are going to go and do it so soon on our yatra. So let's learn about the Ganga. This is the verse that we just read, the first verse of this chapter, talking about how the Ganga came to be in this world. So this is the most well-known story, is that when Vamanadev was tricking Bali Maharaj, basically to give everything to him, and this is how he made him a devotee, was that he begged for 3 steps. He went to ask Bali Maharaj for charity. Bali Maharaj was known for being very charitable, so he said, sure, I'll give you whatever you want. So he took his first step, he covered the whole earth. The second step, he covered the whole universe, and even beyond the universe, because his big toe poked through the universal shell, the covering of the universe, and from that toe, the water of the causal ocean came leaking into our universe. But in the course of doing so, of course, it washed over the foot of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his form of Lord Vamanadev, and so it became purified and purifying. It's like it's the abhishek from the foot bath of the Lord, and so that water remains with that transcendental potency. And also it says that because the Lord's lotus feet are pinkish with a pinkish powder, then the Ganga became pinkish. Because when we see the Ganga, it doesn't look so pink, but it definitely has a different color than any other river I've ever seen. It's like silvery. It's like a silvery, and you'll see some pictures of this that compare it with another river. Okay, so, but then there's another version, a slightly different version of how the Ganga comes into this universe. This is from the 8th canto, so it's equally authoritative because both are from Srimad Bhagavatam. So this one says that when so this also happened during the same event of Vamanadev extending his foot. And so it says, when Lord Brahma, who was born of the lotus flower, saw that the effulgence of his residence Brahmaloka had been reduced by the glaring effulgence from the toenails of Lord Vamadev, he approached the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Lord Vamadev is extending his leg to cover the universe, and Lord Brahma is in his planet Brahmaloka, which is at the top of the universe, the topmost planet in the universe. And so he sees this leg passing by. He's like, what the, what is that? And not only is it just like a foot, this big foot, like, there in front of his planet in outer space. It's like you look out your window one day and you see this huge foot with super effulgent toenails that, are brighter than the light of the sun. So that's what he sees, and he's like, what is that? And then he realizes it must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he approaches him, and then taking advantage of the opportunity of the Lord's foot being right there, he takes the water of his water pot that is he carries with him, but he always keeps it very suchi, and he bathes the Lord's lotus foot with that. So, the second part says, O king, the water from Lord Brahma's kamandalu, that's his water pot, washed the lotus feet of Lord Vamanadev, who is known as Urukrama, the wonderful actor. Thus that water became so pure that it was transformed into the water of the Ganges, which went flowing down from the sky, purifying the three worlds like the pure fame of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So how do we know which one is the right one? So then we have to consult the acharyas. So here we have the purport to that verse. Someone wants to read? Oh, I have to read because it's the only mic. Here we understand that the Ganges began when the water from Lord Brahma's Kamandalu washed the lotus feet of Lord Vamanadev. But in the 5th canto, it is stated that the Ganges began when Vamanadev's left foot pierced the covering of the universe so that the transcendental water of the causal ocean leaked through. So is it from the Kamandalu of Brahma or is it from the causal ocean? And to make things even more complicated, elsewhere it is also stated that Lord Narayan appeared as the water of the Ganges. So nothing needed, he just appeared by his own sweet will as the water of the Ganges. So this is the verdict. The water of the Ganges, therefore, is a combination of the 3 transcendental waters, and thus the Ganges is able to purify the 3 worlds. This is the description given by Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. So it is the water from Brahma's water pot, it's the water from the causal ocean, and it's also the Supreme Personality of Godhead manifesting himself in the form of water, the Ganga. So, so we know that nothing happens randomly. Right? There's a Supreme Personality of Godhead who's controlling everything, who's aware of everything. That means that everything happens for a reason. So what was the reason for the Gangas descending into this world? Vamanadev could have covered the universe without poking a hole in it, right? He could have just touched it to the universal shah. So why did he poke the hole? Why did he seem to want that water to pour into the universe? So one reason, of course, could be just that he wanted to bless the world with the sacred water to give us a chance to get purified. And that's true. But sometimes when Krishna wants something to happen, he doesn't just do it, but he arranges for some very interesting event, like a trigger event, to happen to give another reason, to give some practical, functional reason for the thing to happen. So what was the trigger event for the Ganga appearing? That we can learn about in the 9th canto. So in Canto 9, there's this pastime of a king, King Sagar. So long, long ago, King Sagar was performing a horse sacrifice. But we just heard about this recently with Prithu Maharaj, that Lord Indra kept stealing the horse. So Indra has a habit of doing this. And he did the same thing with Sagar Maharaj. He stole the sacrificial horse. So then Sagar, he sent his sons. He had 60,000 sons, and he sent all of them on a mission to go and find this missing horse. So they were searching all over, and finally they found the horse by the ashram of Kapila Muni. This is the same Kapila Dev, who's the partial incarnation of the Lord. So they, when they saw the horse right there near Kapila Dev's ashram, they assumed that Kapila Dev had stolen it. So then they got very angry, and they got their weapons, because they were Kshatriyas, they were son of the Kshatriya king. They got their weapons, and they were going to kill Kapila Dev. And they were so angry. And then this picture's not exactly right, because it makes it seem like Kapila Dev shot fire from his eyes and burned them. That's not what happened. What actually happened, according to Bhagavatam, is that the anger within the bodies of those 60,000 sons of Sagar ignited a fire within their own bodies, which burned them. So due to their own anger, because when anger is directed towards a saint, a sadhu, then that comes back to oneself, and it destroys oneself. So be careful, don't become angry with devotees. So it's to be like, okay, Prabhu, Hare Krishna. Krishna's controlling everything. Yeah, because if we become angry, then it comes back, and so that's what happened. It burned them. It burned them up. And actually, Kapila Dev wasn't even daunted. He wasn't disturbed or angry at all that these 60,000 young Kshatriyas were coming to attack him. He was just totally cool, totally fixed in the mode of goodness, and sitting there in his meditation. But they were all burned up. Okay, so then they didn't go back. King Sagar, he's back there at the ranch, in the middle of performing his sacrifice, and he wasn't able to complete the sacrifice. So he thought, well, let me perform. Okay, let's see. Let me get this right. Yeah, so King Sagar, his sons weren't able to do it, but one of the wives of some of those sons already had children, and one of his grandsons, Amshuman, his name was Amshuman. So when he grew up, he thought, okay, my fathers and all my uncles weren't able to accomplish this task of finding the horse. Let me go find the horse. So then he went looking, and he first he came upon this huge pile of ashes, which was the remains of all of his 60,000 uncles and his father. And then he saw the horse nearby, so he thought, oh, this must be the remains of my my relatives. And he thought, well, I'm not going to make the same mistake that my father and uncles made. I'm going to actually worship this saint. So then he started worshiping Kapila Dev, offering his obeisances, treating him with great respect. And then Kapila Dev was very happy. He was very pleased with the behavior of this Amshuman. And he knew that he was the grandson of King Sagar, and he knew that those were he knew who he was, because he's a great personality. So, but he was pleased with Amshuman's attitude, which was much different from his forefathers. And so he actually instructed him. He gave him a lot of transcendental knowledge. And at the end of instructing him, he said, and by the way, I know you're looking for this horse that, is supposed to be used in the sacrifice of your grandfather. Here's the horse, you can take him. So that all worked out well. But then Amshuman said that I would like to somehow be able to help my father and my uncles who got burnt to death here. His name, Kapila Dev said, yes, there's a way that they can be liberated, and that is that they need to be touched. The ashes here, this pile of ashes, needs to come in contact with the water of the Ganges. And then Amshuman was thinking, okay, somehow I need to bring the Ganges to this world. So he didn't know how to do that. But if you need to do something that you don't have the power to do, somehow you need to invoke the mercy of the Lord. And often in the Vedic culture, the way to do that is to perform austerities. So then Amshuman went back, and he took the horse back, and then he started performing austerities to try to bring the Ganga to this world. And he spent the whole rest of his life performing austerities, and he was not successful. The Ganga didn't appear. But he had a son, and his son spent his whole life doing austerities to try to bring the Ganga to this world, to purify their forefathers. And even that son, after a whole life of austerities, wasn't able to do it. But then finally they had the grandson, so that son's son, his name was Bhagirat. So Bhagirat also performed austerities for the same purpose, and he was, oopsie daisy, he was successful. Hold on, let me find my place here. Oh. Yeah, so what happened was, so there's Bhagirat, and Ganga Devi was very pleased by his austerities, and she came. So she appeared before him, and she said, my dear Bhagirat, I'm very pleased with you, and I'm prepared to come to award you the benediction that you desire. But I have a couple of concerns. So Ganga Devi was hesitant. She's like, I'm ready, but I have some concerns. If you can allay my concerns, then I'll come. And so she had two issues. Does anyone know what Ganga Devi's two concerns were? Yeah, so that's the one. She knew that many people are going to take bath, and people go to the Ganga to get purified from their sins. So when they go, all the sins go into the water, and then she's going to be contaminated. Okay, and go. Okay, so one, she's going to destroy the earth by her force, because she's coming from high, right? She's coming down from the top of the universe. And she doesn't want to go to those lower regions. Okay, so what does Bhagirath say to convince her that she won't become contaminated? Yeah. That's right. So pure devotees will go and bathe in the Ganga, and all the contamination from the sinful people will be purified, and so she will remain pure. And then what does she do to, how does he arrange for, to catch the force, to sustain the force? Lord Shiva, yeah. So Bhagirathi goes to Lord Shiva, and he actually performs austerities to please Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva says, okay, I'll do it. I'll take the Ganga on my head. And so then King Bhagirath goes back to Ganga Devi, and he tells her that, all right, that Lord Shiva's here, and he's practically non-different from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's like Lord Vishnu is like milk, and Lord Shiva is like yogurt, and yogurt is nothing but milk, and so he has practically all the power of the Lord, and so he can definitely do it. You don't need to worry. He's going to sustain your water. So then Ganga came on the request of King Bhagirath, and therefore another name, like we heard in the verse of Ganga, is Bhagirathi. Bhagirathi Ganga. So now she comes down from the outside of the universe, and you can see, just from this image, you can see with great force she's coming. And she's landing on the head of Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, one thing is he's very strong, but another thing is he has a lot of matted hair. He has all this big, like we have a friend who comes, Judah, Ras Judah. He's got this big Rastafarian hair. So the water falls there and it gets all caught in those locks, and then after it just kind of comes down. So flows through the universe. And it didn't just come one time. The Ganga continuously, from that time, continuously flows down through the universe and through the sky onto the earth. And some say that the Milky Way that we can see in the night sky on a very clear night is the Ganga. In India, they call it the Akash Ganga, which means sky Ganga. So next time you see the Milky Way, this is a very vivid picture. This is actually a real picture. You can remember that. You can think that's actually the Ganga. It's coming down. Cool, right? So as we were reading, when the Ganga comes down, it first comes to Dhruvaloka, the pole star. So Dhruvaloka is at the very top of the universe. It's there's all the 14 planetary systems, and Lord Satyaloka or Brahmaloka is the topmost of the 14 planetary systems. And then above Brahmaloka is Dhruvaloka, the pole star, and all the other stars, all the other planetary systems, all the different like mandalas are hanging from the pole star like a chandelier. And just like you can see here, it's very beautiful. So there's a distance here of Dhruvaloka that it's 3,800,000 yojanas, or 30,400,000 miles above the sun, what to speak of above the earth. So it's very, very high. So it passes through Dhruvaloka. We heard how Dhruva Maharaj, he's very happy to accept the Ganga and to take that water on his head, and then he becomes ecstatic with devotion for the Lord. Then after going to Dhruvaloka, we heard that where does it go next? Planets of the seven sages, the Saptarishis, which are right under. And actually, this is another thing we can see, is that these planets of the seven sages are the seven stars that make up our Big Dipper. And the Big Dipper constantly rotates around the pole star, Dhruvaloka, because those seven sages, they're all devotees, and they know that in addition to Dhruvaloka, who else lives on Dhruvaloka? Lord Vishnu. It's Svetadweep within this universe where Kshiradakshaya Vishnu resides. So they're constantly circumambulating the Lord who lives on. What's that? Makes? Oh, right. There you go. It makes a swastika. Oh, interesting. I didn't notice that. Yeah, so that's the sign of good health and well-being. Okay, so here's a cool picture. I hope you can see it. I can barely see it. So this shows, you can see how the Ganga is coming down. It's going on the head of Lord Shiva. And then this is not exactly accurate because it doesn't, Dhruvaloka is here, like where they show Lord Brahma sitting, and then Brahmaloka is actually here, and then the other higher planets. And then it shows Swargaloka way over here. Swargaloka is actually like underneath these. And then it shows the Saptarishis, the Big Dipper here. Oh, you can't? Okay. Anyways, you can kind of see. See where Brahma's sitting way at the top? That should be Dhruvaloka. And then Brahmaloka is the first one of those discs, those vertical discs. And then they show over on the left side. What do you say? Oh yeah, that's Shishumara. So there's the planetary systems. Those higher planetary systems are form. They're in a formation that looks like a dolphin. Yeah, like a dolphin with his nose down and his tail up. It's so complicated. It's impossible to represent in a two-dimensional drawing like this. But anyways, they tried to put it into perspective. But what's interesting here is you can see how the after flowing through Dhruvaloka and then through the planets of the Saptarishis, then it comes down onto the top of Mount Meru. But we heard about before that something interesting that happens is that it's distributed to all the different planets of Swargaloka. And how is it distributed? Do you remember? Airplanes. They actually load the water into airplanes. It's like a huge logistics system. They load it into airplanes, and the airplanes fly to different planets within the higher planetary systems, all these higher planetary systems above Mount Meru, and they give them doses of the Ganga. So Ganga flows through all the heavenly planets. It goes through all the higher planets, and then it comes down to Mount Meru. Okay, so then you can see there the pedestal-looking thing, or whatever that thing's sticking up. So the middle disk, that's the middle planetary systems, that's Bhuloka or Bhumandala that we've been hearing about in chapter 16, Bhumloka. The very bottom of so that thing that's sticking up out of Bhuloka is Mount Meru, okay? And then you can see how the Ganga is coming down onto the top of Mount Meru, and then, so this is the top of Mount Meru. And then, so that stream that's coming vertical there, that's the Ganga coming down from the higher planets. And then it lands on the top of, you guys okay? Shaishnav, got a realization there. Okay, so it comes down onto the central place on the top of Mount Meru is Brahma's palace. So we were hearing about all these amazing things, right? Like the jambu tree, the mango tree that drops fruit, and it's all happening on, do you remember the name of the place where all this happens? Jambu Dweep is the large thing. Ilavrita Varsha. So it's not actually the heavenly planets, because you can see that the heavenly planets are up. They're like on the up. Yeah, so what's going on the top of Mount Meru is that the demigods have their holiday homes. They have little resorts. You know, like a rich person might have a vacation home in the Swiss Alps or something. So the demigods have vacation homes on the top of Mount Meru. So the central one is Lord Brahma's, and the other ones around, the other palaces that you see there, are different demigods. So first the Ganga flows onto Brahma's palace, and then it splits into 4 directions, north, south, east, and west. And then from there, you see how it's going over the edge, the waterfall there? So then it falls down from the top of Mount Meru onto, this whole disk thing is Jambudweep. And just the part at the base is Ilavrita Varsha, where we heard the descriptions from the previous 2 days' classes. And so where do we fit in all this? Where do we live? We live in Bharat Varsha. So Bharat Varsha, so ours is the southern branch of the Ganga. That's called the Alaknanda. It comes down from there, and then it lands on those 2 mountain ranges that are Hemakuta and Himakuta. So Himakuta is the Himalayas. So it lands on those 2, and then it flows down from the Himalayas into the southern little part, that southern, just the little edge of the circle. That's Bharat Varsha. Okay. Oh yeah, you can see it clear here. So here's a diagram of it. So you see this is the top of Mount Meru in the center, and then the second to the last golden strip, that's Hemakuta mountain range, And then the bottom golden strip is the Himakuta mountain range, which is the Himalayas. And then Bharat Varsha is that part under it, the bottom part of the circle. And then you can see how when the Ganga hits the Himalayas, then it splits up into different branches. And then it, like it said, like we read, it inundates Bharat Varsha. So that's our branch of the Ganga that's coming down through the Himalayas and soaking the earth planet. Okay? So how does this look to us on the earth? Like this. So this is Gomukh. It's a place in the Himalayas that's above, just above Gangotri, and it's the source of the Ganga in this world as we see it. There are other things happening that we don't see, but this is what we see. So you see that above there's like a huge glacier, big, thick, like, you know, and you see the people, they're very small. So this is big. It's this cave that's like a cave in the glacier, and the Ganga comes out of that, and what starts off as a small stream, but it grows as it goes down. All ice. Yeah. 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 And there's mountains. It's like on a mountain, but it's ice. Okay. All right. So then getting back to the story here, King Bhagirathi, he still hasn't got to his ancestors yet. So as soon as he's really happy that the Ganga's agreed to come to earth, and so he goes to meet her there, and he walks in front of her, or Bhagavatam actually says that he drives his chariot, but he goes in front of the Ganga and he's guiding her, like, come this way. This is where my ancestors are, follow me. So he's going, he's directing the flowing to that spot. But on the way, something unexpected happens. Does anyone know? Yeah? What? Janu. Yeah. Okay, yeah. I don't know if he gets really angry, but the way it's described in Bhagavatam is that, this is not described in Bhagavatam. This is described the story is told by Lord Nityananda when he's speaking to Jiva Goswami. Lord Nityananda takes Jiva Goswami on Navadvip Mandal Parikram, and he's telling him all the pastimes. So when they get to Janu Dweep, then Nityananda tells him this story that when Bhagirathi was trying to bring the Ganga to the place of the ancestors, the ashes were, then it passed through Janu Dweep in Navadvip Dham, and Janu Muni was chanting his Gayatri. So he's like chanting his Gayatri. You know, when a Brahman's chanting Gayatri, you're not supposed to disturb them. So you're going to see why. So Ganga was coming full force, this Ganga was coming, and Janu, it was going to just like sweep him away along with his whole ashram. So he said, no, that's not going to happen. And then he didn't get angry. He just opened his mouth. Gulp. He swallowed up the whole Ganga. So then, now no more Ganga. And Janu Muni, he's a very powerful sage. He swallowed the whole thing. So Bhagirathi, he's guiding the Ganga to this place. He's on this mission, for generations of his forefathers have been like performing austerities to bring the Ganga. Finally it came. And then he turns around and he's like, where'd the Ganga go? So then he sees Janu Muni sitting there, Om Boo. and he's like, oh, okay, something happened with this Muni. So he learned the lesson already from his forefathers that you don't get a Muni angry, don't try to attack him and force him. You just have to respect them and let them do things in their own time. So then Bhagirathi, he started worshipping Janu Muni and serving him, doing all kinds of menial service to try to please him. He never said a word about the Ganga. He's just like, please let me serve you. And so he's doing all this stuff. And then finally Janu Muni's like, I'm very pleased with your service and I know what you want. You want the Ganga. So then he cut his knee and the Ganga came gushing out of his knee. So because the Ganga came from Janu Muni's body after being swallowed by him, it's called Janavi. That's another name for Ganga, is Janavi. So that's how that happened. So then finally, long story, many adventures here in the course of the Ganga. So then finally he was able to bring the Ganga to the place where the ashes were, and as soon as it touched the ashes, then immediately all those 60,000 forefathers ascended to heaven. And that's the potency of the Ganga. That's why people like to sprinkle the ashes of cremated forefathers, or we throw the ashes of devotees on the Ganga, because when the Ganga touches the ashes, then the soul gets elevated, or if not liberated. Yeah. There's different versions. Yeah, one says the ear, one says the knee. There's different versions. And maybe it's like Kalpabade, you know, one time it happens one way, one time it happens another way. I think he says the knee there. Okay, so yeah, so Shukadeva Goswami comments in Bhagavatam that even if offensive and violent people contact the Ganga of their ashes, they can go to the heavenly planets. What to speak of those who are devotees who actually worship the Ganga with devotion. And Prabhupada writes that anyone who regularly bathes in the Ganga keeps very good health and becomes a devotee of the Lord. So the Ganga flows through India like this. This is the route of the Ganga that she starts way up in the Himalayas above Haridwar, and then she flows down and across northern India like that. And as you can see that various rivers flow into the Ganga, like Yamuna that goes through Vrindavan also flows into the Ganga completely. And so many, the Kali Gandaki River that comes down from Nepal, the one in which they find all the Shaligram Shilas, that's bathed all those Shaligram Shilas, that also flows into the Ganga. And the Gomati, all these holy rivers flow into the Ganga. And then she continues down. And then when she gets to, you can see where in red it says Rajman Hills, and just above that it says Faraka. So in Faraka, there's a dam where it's split. The Ganga is artificially split. There's a man-made dam. And so most of the Ganga from there flows into Bangladesh. They call it the Padma. And the rest of it they call the Hooghly, and that flows to Sridham Mayapur and onto Kolkata, and then all of them go into the mouth of the Ganges at the Bay of Bengal. You can see this shows how all the rivers basically end up becoming Ganga. So that's why it's so potent to bathe in the Ganga at Mayapur, because by the time it gets to Mayapur, it's got all the holy rivers of North India mixed in it. So we're bathing in Ganga, Yamuna, Gomati, Gandaki, all these different rivers. So, yeah. And actually the Ganga as we see it in Mayapur is very small. I actually went with my family to that Faraka Dam. It's huge. It's the Ganga is so wide at that place just before the dam that you practically can't see the other side of it. The Ganga at Mayapur is quite small because just a small amount, and you see the part that's channeled off to Mayapur, it's small. And it's a little bit bigger, but it's nothing compared to what goes to Bangladesh, and that's why they have those huge floods in Bangladesh almost every year during the rainy season. Sometimes, but the only reason that Mayapur floods is because it's not because of rain, it's because they decide to open more water from the dam. So that's why when there's going to be a flood in Mayapur, we always know, because the people at the dam will notify ISKCON Mayapur management and say, all right, guys, it's going to take about 4 days for the water to get down to you, but it's coming hard, and you're going to get about 6 feet. So everybody knows, to take action. Yeah, get prepared for a big flood. Okay. So then you might think that if all these waters are flowing into the Ganga, then the Ganga must also be very polluted, because rivers get polluted. So, but what do we know about that? That there's this nice verse from the Nectar of Instruction where Rupa Goswami says, Ganga basham nakalu bud bodafe napankar brahma javat from apagat chatinira dharmai. He's talking about the body of a pure devotee. He says that body of a pure devotee is just like the waters of the Ganges, which sometimes during the rainy season is full of bubbles, foam, and mud. But the Ganges waters do not become polluted. Those who are advanced in spiritual understanding will bathe in the Ganges without considering the condition of the water. So the water of the Ganga is Brahma Dravatvam, which means it's totally spiritual. It can't be contaminated by material things, the same way that the soul cannot be touched by anything material. So, and actually it's a fact, it's a scientific fact that even though material pollutants may go into the Ganga, but the Ganga purifies itself. It's self-purifying. And when I was living in Mayapur, one of the things devotees would do is they would go get water from the Ganga for drinking. But they would get it and they put it in a bucket and they would just keep it covered for 10 days. And then after 10 days, they would just pass it through a cloth, like decant it off because some sediments and whatever go to the bottom. So they'll just like filter it and drink it. Like you don't even have to put it through a chemical filter. You just like filter it through a cloth or whatever, a stone filter, and you can just drink it. And they did some tests on it. Like they did a test before, and they found like there's some pollutants and things that could harm the human body. And then after the 10 days of just sitting in the bucket for 10 days, they did a test again, and not all those pollutants were absent. So the Ganga just purifies itself. You just need to give it a little time. So, yeah, so that's pretty amazing. Okay. So then here's some nice pictures of the Ganga. This is at Gangotri, there at the start, just after Gomukh. I've been to this place. The Ganga is so cold there, but it's really fast and furious, very powerful. This is Rishikesh. This bridge here is Lakshman Jewel. The Ganga is you see it's much bigger there. This is Allahabad during Kumbh Mela time. There's tons of people there. They have this huge festival. Everyone bathes in the Ganga. So you can see this is further down, so it's very wide there. This is at Varanasi, which is a very beautiful touristy kind of place where Lord Chaitanya had some transcendental pastimes saving the Mayavadis. This is just a place where the Ganga is going through the countryside, where it's nothing special, except that the Ganga is there, irrigating the farm. A lot of farmers use the Ganga to irrigate their crops that grow near there. This is the dam, Faraka Dam. So this is already getting down near. And then not very far after that, we come to Sridham Mayapur. So TOVP is there. And then near Mayapur, you can see the TOVP is back there. And this is where the Jalangi merges with the Ganga. So you see how it is a little bit pinkish. It's like a silvery pink, just like it's described in Bhagavatam. So you can see like the difference. And most rivers, they're like dark. They're like a bluish black. Like Jalangi is very black. Yamuna is very black. But Ganga always has this distinctive silvery, pinkish, grayish color. So we know that Lord Krishna performed so many pastimes in the Yamuna. He danced on Kaliya's heads in the Yamuna. He danced with the gopis on the bank of the Yamuna. He would go with the cowherd boys and they would swim and play in the Yamuna. The cows would drink from the Yamuna. And so Ganga Devi saw this and she thought, well, the Lord actually, of course, Yamuna flows into me. That's all good. But, Krishna performed so many pastimes in the Yamuna. And what about me? I would like the Lord to perform some pastimes. So she wasn't jealous, but she was very happy that Yamuna is getting this special mercy from Krishna, but she's also wanting to get some special mercy for herself. So then one day Krishna appears to Ganga Devi and says, don't worry, in Kali Yuga, I'm going to come and my form will be the combined form of Radha and Krishna, and together we're going to perform many, many pastimes in your waters. So we see that Lord Chaitanya, he appeared during an eclipse when everybody was chanting the holy names, standing in the Yamuna and standing in the Ganga and chanting the holy names. Lord Chaitanya's childhood pastimes, he was always swimming and playing with his friends in the Ganga. And then this picture on the right is Keshava Kashmiri, that he was, Lord Chaitanya defeated him, and he thought he was the best pandit in the land. And Lord Chaitanya, he composed this beautiful prayer by the mercy of Saraswati, glorifying Mother Ganga in 100 verses. And Lord Chaitanya, like Nimai Pandit at the time, he found some faults in him and he defeated him. And that's when Keshava Kashmiri realized, oh my God, this must be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then later, Lord Chaitanya inaugurated the Sankirtan movement on the banks of the Ganga in Navadvip. He took sannyas at Katva on the bank of the Ganga. And then he also, after taking sannyas, he went to Puri. Actually, according to Vrindavan Das Thakur, he says that Mother Ganga was so eager to continue assisting Lord Chaitanya in his pastimes that after flowing, so Ganga flows into the Bay of Bengal, into the sea, and then Vrindavan Das Thakur says that when she reaches the sea, when Lord Chaitanya was in Puri, she went racing down to Puri. And she made a beeline for Jagannath Puri because Lord Chaitanya at that time, he was going every day and bathing in the sea. 3 times a day. So she's like, I need to keep, Lord Chaitanya needs to keep bathing in my waters. So that was cool. And Lord Chaitanya was very attached to Ganga, actually. When he was living in Puri, he would sometimes go back to Bengal, and he would say that I come. Well, first of all, he says, I come in this age in 2 forms, as wood and as water. As wood, Lord Jagannath, and as water, the Ganga. And when he goes back, he says, one time when he was walking back to West Bengal, he said, I'm going to Bengal for 2 reasons. 1, to see my mother, Sachi Devi, and 2, to see my other mother, Mother Ganga. So then, and then he was, when he was, after saying that, he started glorifying the Ganga like anything, saying, whoever bathes in Ganga, touches the Ganga, drinks the Ganga, sees Ganga, or even if the person's touched by a breeze that's blown over Mother Ganga, will get Krishna prema, love for Krishna. So the Ganga is very powerful, very merciful, and as devotees of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, we very much revere the Ganga, worship the Ganga, bathe in the Ganga, and when we see Ganga and hear about Ganga, we remember the pastimes of the Lord. So, Jai. Ganga Devi ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Gaura Premanandi. And I'm sorry I don't have time to go for questions because I'm already 3 minutes late for I have to run over to school.
Prabhu Srinivas Rama